Hi, my name is Michael Cullen for Film Sound Tutorials, and today I want to make a quick video about how to get an audio job in the film and the video game industries. And so this is a pretty common question I get whenever I get any emails, any YouTube comments, or when I lecture at universities, and so I figured I might as well put all of my information into one video so that I can easily share it around. And as a disclaimer, these are only tips that I've come up with, but as you probably already know, there is no set way to get an audio job. Every person I've talked to, they've always got into the audio industry a little bit differently, but I think these are some solid steps that you can use to make a plan to then try to get an audio job. So the first step is to do research. And this is one of the steps that I found people most often miss. They get so excited and so interested on just applying for jobs that they don't really understand the industry as a whole. So when you start doing your research, I think the best way to do it is that you make a spreadsheet and then you start writing down the following. Who are the people working in the audio industry? What studios are doing the work? What communities are there for audio professionals? And what job postings are out there? And just to go in depth on each category, first you need to figure out who is actually doing the audio work. And so some easy ways that you can do this is you can find people on LinkedIn, you can find people on Google, you can find people on a website called soundlister.com. And when you're looking at these people on these websites, just take a note of what was their career path. How did they actually get to where they are today? Because generally it's not a straightforward path. You also want to note what their skills were. What programs do they use? How did they use those skills on the different projects that they worked on? What projects did they take on to help them build the skills to get the job that they currently have? Also, something to note is where they located. Although things are changing now with the pandemic, before the pandemic, most full-time audio jobs required you to go into an office, and so it's also good to know, in general, where you need to be to do those jobs. So now when you're looking on LinkedIn, here's some job terms that you can look up to find different people. So if you're looking to work in film, you'll probably see people with the titles of sound mixer, maybe they're boom ops, maybe they're sound assistants helping out the sound team. If you're interested in post sound, then you'll probably be looking for re-recording mixers or sound supervisors or sound effect editor, dialogue editor, or Foley walkers. Now, if you're in game audio, generally most people use the term of sound designer, or maybe they're the lead sound designer of a game, or if they run the audio division, then they're normally called the audio director. So for example, let's type in sound designer into LinkedIn, and you'll see there'll be thousands of different results. And you can see here that people are actually posting job openings here on LinkedIn as well. But then something that you can do if you open the All Filters tab is that you can start selecting different locations that you're interested in. And so maybe you want to learn about people in the United States, or maybe in England, or maybe in a certain city like LA. And if you want to look in a specific location, you can just type it here in the Add Location filter and then click Show Results. So then once you kind of know who's working in the audio industry, you'll also kind of notice what companies are actually doing this audio work. And to find more companies, an easy way to find them is just by searching by location again. So if you go on Google Maps, you can search for different studios. So for example, if you want to do post sound work, you could type in post sound studio, and you'll see, bam, there's a whole bunch of different studios in LA. And what's kind of cool about using Google Maps is you can see where they're located. And so most post sound studios are here up in Burbank and in Glendale. And then if you click on one like Smart Post Sound here, then you can see their website, see their contact info, and learn more about them that way. Now, if you want to learn more about video game studios, there's this great website called GameSmith DevMap that will show you where most of the video game studios are in the world. And so right off the bat, obviously, you can see there's a whole bunch of here in California, San Francisco, LA, Seattle, Austin, Chicago, Boston. If you're going internationally, you'll see there's a bunch in London, in Paris, in Spain, Eastern Europe, and then of course there's a whole bunch in Asia as well. So then after learning about the various studios, you just want to start making a note. Does this studio make their own content, or are they a contract studio and they normally get hired to work on other people's content instead. And then just see what projects they worked on. Most studios have a specialty of type of projects that they work with, or that's the projects that they get because of their connections. Some studios will work just on blockbuster films. That will be the larger studios like Universal or Warner Brothers or Sony, versus maybe smaller studios are working on indie films or on TV shows or commercials. And same goes with video games. You can have studios that only work on like AAA titles, or there's other smaller studios that work on indie games or even mobile games. Also, most film cities have what they call production directories that are essentially white pages for these businesses as well. And then when you're doing this, also try to find a contact email that we'll use when you start applying for jobs. So next up, once you kind of know who's working in the audio industry and what studios are doing the work, you'll also want to learn about the different organizations tied to the audio industry. Because generally you'll find out that knowing people and having connections and being part of communities is what's going to help you get new jobs. And so there's some big societies in the film industry: the Motion Picture Sound Editor, MPSC, CAS, which is a Cinema Audio Society, GANG, or Game Audio Network Guild, is really big, and of course the Audio Engineering Society. There's a whole bunch of organizations that are trying to help you get into the audio industry. There's different unions that you might have to join depending on what kind of work you're doing. Of course, there's audio groups on Facebook. Of course, there's a bunch of audio content on Twitter, on Reddit. There's some really big subreddits for audio plugins, sound effect libraries. I've heard that Discord is getting pretty big now. Also, too, you can meet up with people at IGDA Game Jams. There's the Global Game Jam, and there's even meetup groups now where people meet up and talk about different audio topics. And then the final part of the research step is that you should start looking at new job postings and just starting to see like what type of jobs are available. What kind of jobs are really popular right now? Also, what's good to note is what seniority level are people hiring at? Are they hiring senior sound designers? Do they have internship positions? It really depends by the company and what kind of work they need to do. So you might not want to apply for a company that only looks for very experienced designers because you just don't have those skills yet. And then also note, what skills are they requiring? In general, when you're working with audio, you'll need to know about plugins, you'll need to know how to record properly, how to mix properly. Now, if you want to work specifically in film, it's good to know Pro Tools. It's good to know how to route audio within Pro Tools and using different buses. It's also good to know about films in general. How do you sound design different types of films? What are the different tropes or sound techniques used for different genres? Now, if you're working in game audio, you need to know the game dev software. So you'll need to know Unity or Unreal. You'll probably want to learn how to use Wwise and Fmod. Reaper is becoming really popular in the game audio industry. And you also want to know about games. How do games normally work? What do games normally sound like? These are all good things to know when you're looking for an audio job. Great, so to finish this step, you'll want to know what type of work is being done where, who is doing the work and what skills do they have, and then what communities are available so when you need help, you can find it, and then figure out which companies are actually hiring. Great, so now that we better understand the audio industry, the next step is to make a career goal. So the first step of making a career goal is you have to figure out what job you want to do. Do you want to be on set? Do you want to be a production mixer? Do you want to be a boom op? Do you want to work in post sound? So do you want to be a dialogue editor, sound effects editor, eventually graduate to being a sound supervisor? Do you want to be on the mixing side? Do you want to be a re-recording mixer? Do you want to record the ADR or the Foley? And then of course, once the domestic version of a film gets done, there's a whole bunch of other audio people working on the M&E or the music and effects track. So then the film can go and get localized. There's even another audio department just for QC and archival of the audio. And this is just a small list of audio jobs within the film industry that you can do. And then if you're looking to get into game audio, you might want to be a voice designer, an audio artist, or a sound effect editor. Do you want to be a sound designer or a technical sound designer, which means that you know how to use Unity and Wwise and Fmod and all the middleware software? Do you want to be an implementer that only adds audio to the game? Do you want to be an audio director and manage the team? Do you want to be a music designer that figure out the systems of when music should play, how the music plays, is it an interactive music mix? Or you could be on the programming side and design the the audio engine that controls what plays when, or you could even be a producer and help manage the team and work with other departments to make sure that the audio gets done in time for the video game's release. And if you want to learn about even more job titles for the film industry, you can go to the Motion Picture Editors Guild's website and you can see all the different types of jobs there are. So for example, if you go to contract and go to post-production majors, these are the really big blockbuster films. On the drop-down, you can see all the different types of audio jobs that people can do while working on a blockbuster film. And what's kind of nice with this too, you can select one and then you can actually see what the minimum rate is for that job in LA. Great, so now that you've seen what jobs there are, this is the hardest part. The hardest part is to figure out what job do you actually want to do. You have to figure out, do you want to be a full-time employee? Do you want to be a contract employee? What kind of lifestyle do you want? Some jobs you have to work every day for over a couple months. Some jobs you have to work 18-hour days. And some jobs are just 8 hours a day. You have to figure out what kind of projects do you want to work on? Where do you want to live? What skills are you interested in learning? How much do people make? You have to think about healthcare and retirement, and if you need to join a union. And if you're going to have a freelancing business, then you also need to know about business and about different types of business and how to do taxes and how to do business development. And also just figure out how flexible do you want this job to be and what connections do you have that you can use to get work. And the reason this is such a hard decision is because there's so many variables at play, is that this is why you have to kind of figure out for yourself what you want to do before you actually start looking for a job. So for example, when I was looking for jobs, job location was really important to me. So when I started doing my research, I was looking to see what job could I do where. So for example, for film sound, most of the jobs are in LA or New York. Atlanta and Albuquerque are starting to get pretty big. In Canada, Vancouver and Toronto are big. London, Paris, Rome, Mexico City. And then India has a big industry. China has a big industry. And even South Korea has a big film industry as well. And then what I found was interesting is that when you look at the game audio industry, there's not too much overlap between the cities. So San Francisco, as we saw in the game dev map, is really big. Austin is becoming really popular. Boston and the Midlands. I know Bangalore is becoming really big in India. Istanbul has a bunch of mobile game companies. Germany, obviously Tokyo and Japan. And so I found it really interesting and reassuring that I could do audio work not just in LA and not just in San Francisco. So once you've figured all that out, you essentially want to put together a sentence that says, I want to be, and then you put in your job title, working on this type of projects in a realistic time frame. So if you're just starting out, it might take a year. It took me over 3 years to get a full-time position in audio work. And just a note, this doesn't have to be set in stone, but the reason we're doing this is that you want to give yourself a direction on now where to put your efforts. So, for example, if you want to work in film sound, specifically post sound, you could say, I want to be a post sound effects editor working on TV shows in 1 year. Awesome. So it's a specific goal with the time frame that you can try to stick to. So then your next steps might be, if you're in LA, what post studios offer those services? Which ones focus on making TV shows? So there's the major studios that work on TV shows, the Formosa Group as well, but normally if you're just starting out, you can't work on those shows because those are union productions and you have to be in the sound union first before you can work on those shows. But you might be able to start working at smaller studios like Smart Post Sound or Boombox or Juniper or Monkeyland, who might be able to give you an internship or apprenticeship, and then you start working from there. Now, if you want to work in video games, you could say, I want to be an associate sound designer working on action-adventure video games in 1 year. Okay, awesome. So then your next step could be, okay, I could try to work at Ubisoft or Insomniac or Rocksteady or Rockstar. And some of those studios do have internships, they do have entry-level positions, but generally what I've seen people do is that they have to work at an outsourcing company first to gain more experience before they can actually get hired at the larger studios. Like Side Global is a really big localization dialogue company. Formosa Interactive is really big. Moonwalk Audio, Hexany Audio, Sweet Justice Sound. These are all outsourcing companies that the large studios use to help out on these really large projects. And so you might try to get a job at those smaller studios first to then eventually getting your goal to work at a larger studio. So to complete this step, the final result is you know what type of work you want to do, you know which job you're going to focus on applying to, you know what skills are needed for that job, and then you know how quickly you think you can achieve that goal. Great, so now that we have some direction, let's make a portfolio tailored to that chosen job. So you'll need a resume, you'll need a reel, you might need multiple reels, depending if you're applying on multiple jobs. You'll need a website where you can put this stuff, and you'll probably want to have some social media presence as well for people to know that you are a professional doing this job. So just to break it down a little bit further, on your resume, you need to have your contact info on top. Please have a professional email that normally just contains your name. You want to have your phone number. Generally now you don't put your address and location because it's not really needed. And then you'll want to have a link to your website or to your reel on the resume. So when you send it in as a digital PDF, people can just click on the link and start to see your work. Now, the length is kind of a controversial subject. In the US, it's generally better to have a shorter resume, so 1 to 2 pages, depending on how much experience you have. But internationally, I've heard it actually depends on the country. So for example, in India, I've heard that you actually want to have the longest resume as possible to clearly detail how much experience you have. The resume should be shown in chronological order with the latest work on top. And you want to kind of show a progression of your skills. You want to tell the story of your career. Generally, it's best to use bullet points in your resume so people can easily skim it, and then only include the info that's relevant to the position. If it's not really that important to the job you're applying for, then you probably shouldn't include it because it's just taking up space and cluttering up your resume. And then a very important point is that if you're trying to apply for different types of jobs, if you're trying to become a dialogue editor and a sound effects editor, then you'll probably want to have different resumes to show those skills. Because the whole point of the resume is to make it abundantly clear to the recruiter or the hiring manager that you have the skills to do that exact job. You're trying to make their job so easy that it would be a mistake not to hire you. And then next up, since this is an artistic field, you'll need a reel to show off your actual sound work. Now, the topic of reels is also kind of a controversial subject. I know some sound designers that have never made a reel and still get plenty of work. But in my opinion, reels are one of the easiest and the quickest ways to show off your skills. And so I think they're important to have if you're just starting your audio career. And so generally on the reel, you want to have your contact info either at the beginning or at the end. The reel should have content in the same genre as the job you're applying for. So if you want to be a sound effect editor for cartoons, you should probably show that you can make sound effects for cartoons. In the reel, you want to make sure you put your best work first to catch someone's attention. Then in this video, you should also clearly state what you did. And so a good way to do that is having a lower third on the bottom of the video saying, I did the sound effects, I did the mixing, or I handled all the audio in this video. You'll probably want to have a minimum of 3 examples, and you don't want the reel too long, maybe max 5 minutes. And it's really common for people to take trailers off YouTube, take different scenes off YouTube, different gameplay videos, and redesign them, and that's okay. And then just to highlight, if you're applying for different jobs, you should have different reels for each type of job to make it clear that you can do that exact job. So just to give you a quick example of what a reel looks like, here's an old reel I made showing off the work I did in Murphy's Law, and it shows you on the bottom exactly what type of work I did on the film.
Where's my negotiator?
Right here.
All right, next up, you need a website that you can put all of your different portfolio items on. So you'll want to put your resume on there, you want to put all your reels on there, and if you can put the full versions of the films or the video games on there as well, that would be great. Because then if the recruiter is really interested in what you did, then they can actually watch the full film for themselves. There's a couple free website hosts that you can use to do this. WordPress is really popular, Wix is popular, and the websites do not need to be fancy. In fact, you want to make them as simple as possible available so people can easily get on the website and find all your content. Last up, you probably want to have some kind of social media presence. You want to have a LinkedIn where you can also put your resume and your portfolio and your website and your reels. You'll probably want to have Facebook and Instagram because there's a lot of good groups so you can get info and tips and jobs from. If you're working in film, IMDb is still pretty popular, and so people also use IMDb as an online resume. And then, as I said before, there's also communities on Twitter, on Reddit, on Discord, on Twitch, and on Clubhouse that you can also use to learn more about the audio industry and to have people learn more about you. So to complete the step of making a portfolio, you want to have built credibility online. You want to prove to the recruiters and the companies that you can do the job, and you want to make sure that your work is easy to find on the internet. Awesome. So finally, the fourth step in this process is now to start applying for jobs. And again, before you apply for jobs, make sure your portfolio actually covers the requirements on the listing. Also, make sure that all your content is clearly labeled, make sure that the file names have your name on them, and make sure that all your links work. Make sure when you deliver your resume as a PDF, everything works and looks good. Great, so now when you're starting to look for film jobs, you'll start to realize that most of them are not on the internet. And because the film industry is a very insular industry, and it's mostly about who you know, what you'll quickly find out is that you have to reach out to people to get their attention and try to find jobs. And so there are a few studios that publicly say they offer internships, like the Television Academy. I know Boombox Post has one as well. But really what you have to do is start just emailing and calling these studios to figure out if they have space to start training someone. So what you want to do in these emails is be very kind, give them a short synopsis of who you are, attach your resume, have your website link, and ask if they have any need for an internship or apprentice or even a runner job. Another way that people have gotten jobs in the film industry is by emailing top sound designers and re-recording mixers who have their own freelance business. I've also seen some freelance jobs on Facebook group. I also know about people that have met during the 48-hour film project, where a whole group of random people get together and make a film in 48 hours. And really, you just want to start making connections. Now, for the game industry, it's a little bit different. Because most of these companies are tech companies, they do have some kind of formal HR system, and they do have recruiters either in-house or they'll hire a third-party recruiting company to go and find people. And because of that, more often, the game audio jobs do have public postings online. So some good game audio job aggregators that I've found is gamesjobs.co, soundlister.com, devbrada.com, and a few other ones. If they are a really small video game studio, it might be more similar to the film studios, where you just have to email them and see if they need help. But generally, it's easier to find. So for example, here's gamejobs.co, and I just typed in audio, and you'll start to see all these different listings that came out in the past month or so. Generally, after listings been out for a month, it's old, and they probably aren't accepting new applicants. But as you can see, there's a whole bunch of different types of jobs in a whole bunch of different locations. Here's DevBrada, and it seems like they do a better job of listing them in chronological order. And as you can see, there's a lot of work being done by a wide variety of companies that need someone to help right now. But again, even with all these job postings online, that's only a small percentage of the actual available jobs. So it's still in your best interest to go and email studios and different outsourcing companies. You want to go and reach out to people on LinkedIn and connect with different recruiters and audio directors, because they will normally post when different jobs come available for their team or their company. You can look on Facebook. Some studios will use third-party recruiting agencies to find different sound designers. And two, you might want to reach out to your local colleges that have audio departments and game dev classes and maybe see if you could start helping out there first, making connections with those professors who then might have connections themselves to the larger industry. And when you're applying, the most important part about this is that you have to be consistent. So when I was first looking for jobs, I would spend about 2 to 3 hours every day in the morning going over the job aggregators, sending more emails, following up with people to try to see what jobs are available. And then normally in the afternoon, that's when I would do my freelance work and to continue upgrading my audio skills. And you should know that when you get a new job, they won't expect you to be an expert in everything audio, because inevitably you will always have to learn something new, so you shouldn't worry that you know exactly every skill that they're requesting. Also, you should know that you might not get a job because of reasons unrelated to you. I've heard of jobs that have gone off the market because maybe the project got canceled or someone internally transferred to do that job instead. And so actually no one got the job because something happened on the back end that you never eventually learned about. And you should also be realistic. It will probably take over 100 applications just to get an interview and an offer, and that's normal. That is part of the process because these job openings are so competitive and you're competing against people around the world that you have to understand it's going to take time to actually get these jobs. So in the best case scenario, to complete the step, eventually you will get an initial interview with the recruiter or the hiring manager for one of these jobs. And if you're going for a production sound job, then you normally just show up on set and then prove that you can actually do the job. But if you're going for a post-production sound job or a game audio job, then the next step is you're normally given a sound test. And so this will have you either redesign one of their older projects, and generally for these tests, you have about a week to complete them. And then if your sound tests went well, then you'll probably get an interview with your potential boss and maybe the other members of the sound team. And then if all that goes well, then hopefully you'll get a job offer and you'll sign the contract to actually do the work. But it doesn't stop there because, of course, the final step in this is that you have to keep learning and you have to keep upgrading your skills and your network. Because once you start applying for these jobs, you'll start to realize which skills you need to improve. You might need to complete some more sample projects, do some sound redesign videos, which will probably have you redo your portfolio and your reels. You probably want to find and complete more freelance work so you have more experience under your belt and again make more connections. Of course, you can take classes online. All the video game software have online classes and sample projects, and generally they're free, except sometimes they ask you to buy a certificate, but don't buy the certificate because no one actually cares about that when you're looking for a job. If you want to do some paid courses, there's the School of Video Game Audio that I've seen a lot of people do. And then, of course, a lot of colleges are now offering courses on how to do this work. In fact, I teach one of them at one of my local colleges, and you might need to learn skills outside of just doing audio. And then also, as you probably know, there's tons of different courses on YouTube, and I've tried to help with that as well. The GDC Vault has a bunch of different videos as well, and Soundworks is fantastic, giving you the behind-the-scenes look on how audio is made for blockbuster films. There's different ear training games that you can do and learn about different microphones. There's the Game Audio Bible Doc, which is over 130 pages long on different articles and tips on how to get audio jobs. There's great podcasts. You might want to learn some coding, especially if you're getting into video game audio. There's some great magazines that you can do, and you might want to even learn some productivity tools as well. And then last up, you need to develop your soft skills. So that means that you have to be able to collaborate with other disciplines, be able to talk about sound concepts with people that aren't fully immersed in sound. You also have to be able to take feedback. And sometimes you don't agree with the feedback, but you have to make the change regardless. You also have to be able to scope a project properly. So when a client comes up with a new job, then you can kind of figure out from the beginning how much work there needs to be for that project. Also, it's important just to be reliable. People remember when you hit deadlines and get work done on time. That also means that you probably have to be adaptable and flexible because projects are always changing, scope is always changing, budgets are always changing, and so you have to be mindful of that and to be able to adapt accordingly. And last up, you just have to be nice and polite because you'll keep getting new jobs if people like to work with you. So, in conclusion, hopefully these 5 steps will help you make a plan to get a job in the audio industry. And of course, the first step, like I said, is to know how the audio industry works, who does what, how does work actually get done. From that, then you can make a plan on what job you actually want to do and how do you want to fit within that industry. Then you need to make a portfolio to prove that you can do that work. And then you should be prepared and flexible when work comes your way. And then, like I said, once you start applying for jobs, your work isn't over. You need to keep learning and connecting with others because it isn't just a one-time thing. You're always trying to become a better sound designer. And then just a couple tips. You have to, again, remember that there is no normal path in getting an audio job. Having a unique career path is the norm, so don't get discouraged by the process. And you should also know that it takes time and consistent effort to achieve your goal. So hopefully that was helpful. I want to say a big thanks to everyone I've talked to that helped me put these tips together. And if you have any questions, feel free to ask them in the comments below. And I wish you a whole bunch of luck that you find the job that you're looking for. So thanks for watching, and I'll see you soon.